Hello again for those trickling in. My name is Jessica Keegan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from the Office of Economic Empowerment. We're super excited to partner with Empower today to work on the Massachusetts 401k Core Plan for Small Nonprofits webinar presentation. As we noticed earlier, we are the Office of Economic Empowerment. We're partnering with Empower. If you like empowerment, especially financially, you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's just start and go through some disclosures, some housekeeping, and then dive into the presentation. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, but definitely feel free as questions arise to pop them in the Q&A and we'll address them if they're relevant. And if not, we'll circle back at the end to go ahead and ask some questions. So the Office of Economic Empowerment is a department with the state treasury. We work with all walks of life, all different organizations. We partner with folks like Empower and nonprofits to make sure that financial education, financial literacy, closing the race and gender wage gap, racial equity, college affordability, and promoting STEM education are priority for all of those walks of life. Again, economic empowerment is in the name, which is why we are here today. Since this is a Zoom webinar, you may notice that this is different than your standard Zoom meeting, but this will be recorded onto our public website, so you will be able to see this on YouTube later. We will make sure to send this out in the follow-up email, so that way you can see the recording again, just so you're able to reference it. You will be able to, of course, use the chat record and send anonymous Q&As, but since we are a public organization, we are subject to public record laws. Since this is, again, a webinar and not a meeting, you're not going to be able to turn on your camera or your microphone, but you are able to speak in the chat and ask questions through the Q&A. Again, feel free to please ask questions when you feel the need to, and we'll address them when appropriate. And once you hit exit today, you will be directed to a post survey. It's only 3 questions. If you fill that out, we would be very much so appreciated. If you like our mission, if you like these Money Talk Tuesdays, if you want more information about us, definitely check out the Office of Economic Empowerment, our events coming up in the future, or for more financial topics and literacy, you can visit myfinanciallifema.org. And I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Lisa.
Okay. So I'm not sharing my screen yet, correct?
Not yet, but you are welcome to.
Okay, so this, this, and I'll be right with everyone in just a moment there.
So we can see your whole screen.
You see my screen? Okay, and you can hear me and see.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Jessica. And thank you everyone for attending today. I'm happy to be speaking with you. So I'm going to talk about the core plan, which is a retirement plan the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, specifically the Treasurer's Office, has put together specifically for small nonprofits in our state. And I'm going to be pretty informal. As Jessica mentioned, feel free to chat in whatever questions you might have. Here are the sections of this presentation. We'll start by talking about what makes the core plan different from other retirement plans. The second section, we'll talk about your employer experience and the plan details. And that's where the bulk of the detailed information is. Then we'll talk a little bit about employee engagement and making a smooth transition. So it should take about 40 minutes in total. So my email address is kind of small, but I'll read it. It's lisa.cardinal, C-A-R-D-I-N-A-L, @empower.com. Empower is E-M-P-O-W-E-R. And the phone number 617-510-4036. Thanks so much. So starting with the core plan. Why is this different? Well, it's different because the core plan was built for you. The core plan was built for nonprofits in Massachusetts, and you can be sure that this plan now and in the future will always be based on what's in the best interest of nonprofits. And the Commonwealth, the Treasurer's Office, they assembled a group of nonprofit leaders across the state as their advisory team. So the Commonwealth consulted this advisory team when the plan was first being designed, and they continue to consult with this advisory team on a regular basis just to make sure this plan is meeting the needs of the nonprofit sector. And the mission of the plan is to help Massachusetts nonprofit employees save and invest for a financially secure retirement. So to be eligible for this plan, your organization has to have been organized in Massachusetts, and you have to have 20 or fewer W-2 employees at the time you join the plan. It's okay if you go over that limit once you're already in the plan, but just at the time you're signing up, you have to have 20 or fewer W-2 employees. So some unique features of the core plan are, number one, this whole concept of fiduciary oversight. Normally, when you offer your employees a retirement plan, there has to be a plan fiduciary. And usually the plan fiduciary is the employer. And when you're the employer, or when you're the fiduciary rather, you have to take on a whole bunch of responsibility and liability. And those responsibilities generally fall into two categories, and that is administration and investments. So just to give you an example, one example in each category, under administration, when you're the fiduciary, you have to file and sign a Form 5500 form. And under the investment category, you normally have to review the investments that are being offered to your employees. But with this plan, you don't have to do that. The vast majority of fiduciary responsibilities are transferred off of your plate and over to the state, which is really unique and really a nice feature. And one of the reasons the plan was set up this way was it's an example of how this plan was built for you. So when the Commonwealth met with the advisory board as the plan was being developed, the Commonwealth said, what is it that's important to small nonprofits? And we were told that, those of you at small nonprofits wear a ton of hats. You're not going to have a lot of time to spend on the administration of the plan. So that's why the plan was designed for the Commonwealth to be the fiduciary. And I'll say more about fiduciary responsibilities in a minute. The next bullet says a multiple employer retirement plan. Usually when you or an organization goes to a financial services company and says, hey, I want to have a retirement plan, you would get a product and a price based on just your organization. You might be saying, hey, we have 7 employees. We want a 401k. What can you get? What can you give us? And it can be really hard for small organizations to find a quality, affordable program. So the Commonwealth designed this plan as a multiple employer plan, which means all of the organizations who join this plan, we look at you as one large group. So you benefit from scale. So with this plan, you're likely getting a more robust retirement plan at a lower cost than you would get if you just went out on your own to a financial services company and said, I have 7 employees and I want a 401k. So it's a multiple employer plan as opposed to a single employer plan. And then the third bullet on this page, because the Commonwealth is not a financial services organization, they needed to team up with one to do all the customer service. And that's who Empower is. So you see the 2 logos at the bottom. Core, again, is the name of the 401k. The Commonwealth had their attorneys draft a plan document, and then the Commonwealth branded it Core, which stands for Connecting Organizations to Retirement. And they selected Empower through a robust RFP process to do all the customer service, to send out all the statements, to answer all the call center phones, to put together the website. So if you join this plan, you and your employees mostly would be dealing with Empower. Okay. So now I'm jumping back to the fiduciary responsibility concept. So on the left-hand side, these are the key fiduciary responsibilities that you would normally have to handle in most other retirement plans, because you, the employer, would be the fiduciary. But with this plan, you don't have to. The Commonwealth handles these things. And a lot of times employers don't even know that they're the plan fiduciary, but the fiduciary is responsible for the things you see here. You need to create an investment policy and monitor the investments that are being offered to your employees. You don't have to do that with this plan. The Commonwealth does it along with their independent investment consultant, Aon Hewitt. Normally, you have to amend the plan documents when laws change. You don't have to do it with this plan. The Commonwealth does. Normally, you have to file and sign the Form 5500. And some organizations say, oh, we'll prepare the 5500 for you, but you're usually still signing it. So if you're signing it, you're responsible. But with this plan, you're not preparing it, you're not signing it. Last couple of items: ensuring the plan operates in accordance with the law and the plan documents. Commonwealth handles that, and monitoring the service provider. So the Commonwealth monitors Empower because that is a fiduciary responsibility, and Empower is the service provider. There are other service providers I'll mention down the road, and the Commonwealth does monitor them. Now, on the right-hand side, these are not necessarily fiduciary responsibilities, but these are things that have to get done when you offer a retirement plan. But with this retirement plan, you don't have to handle these things because either Empower or the Commonwealth handles these. So it's an auto enrollment plan. Empower sends out all the enrollment material for your employees. You don't have to. Empower will record keep the deferral elections and the beneficiary elections. Empower will approve hardship withdrawal requests. Employees are allowed to take their money out if they have a financial hardship, but there's a certain definition of what a financial hardship is. It has to meet IRS requirements. So we'll do that review so you don't have to. There are required notices that have to go out, which we'll send out. And a summary plan description has to go out. The Department of Labor said you have to give a summary in layman's terms to all eligible employees. So we prepare that and distribute it. All right, so moving right along, and just a little bit about Empower. So we are like a Fidelity, basically. We're a financial services company, specialize in retirement. If you look on the left-hand side, starting from the bottom up, we are the fastest growing retirement plan company. A lot of other organizations are getting out of the business. We are actually acquiring. We recently acquired Mass Mutual's retirement plan business and Prudential's retirement plan business. So it's a pretty exciting time to be with Empower. We have over 71,000 plans and over 1.4 trillion in assets on our record keeping system. And on the right-hand side, you can see a glimpse of the nonprofit business. So we serve more than 11,000 nonprofit plans across Empower. And here's a little bit about Empower's culture and our values. It really is a very nice place to work. Everyone knows, we need to be customer obsessed. We obviously are going to do what's right for the customer. Everyone is accountable. As I mentioned, we're growing, we're leading the industry. We're constantly improving. Everything we do, we try to make it simple and actionable. And an example of that is how our website tools work, which we'll talk about later. And it's a very inclusive environment. Internally, we have business resource groups where employees can rally around a certain interest, whether it's veteran status, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, because we know different perspectives are important, and if employees are happy, that translates and provides better services to our customers. So before I get into the next section, are there any questions, Jessica?
At the moment, we do not have any questions, but feel free to place them in the chat or the Q&A whenever they arise, folks.
Okay, so now we're getting into the second section, and this is the section I said that really has a lot of the detail. So think about this information when you're wearing your employer hat. I know that you guys wear two hats, probably more than two, but you're an employer and an employee. This information relates to you when you're wearing your employer hat. So if you come on board with Empower, there will be an implementation period that takes about 60 days, and you will work with one of the three individuals you see up top, one of the three implementation consultants, Mike, Troy, or Lily, and they'll have a handful of phone calls with you and ask you to fill out a few forms just to get everything all set up on our system and ready to go. Down at the bottom, the relationship manager, Wayne Veal, he will conduct a webinar for your employees at the end of the implementation period, letting your employees know how the plan works, letting them ask questions, showing them how they're going to log on and make their elections. And then in the middle, you have two client service managers, Sandra and Tony. And the client service managers are the two people you'll probably work with most often. They will be your day-to-day contacts. So the big decision when you set up this plan is, what are you going to use for a contribution option? And on the left-hand side, you can see there are three contribution options. Number one, you can have no employer contribution. So let's say it's just not in the budget, but you still want to set up a plan because your employees can still contribute and get some tax benefits. You can do that. You can set this up without any employer contribution. Or if you do want to make an employer contribution, you would choose either option 2 or option 3. Option 2 is a specific matching formula. It's called an IRS basic safe harbor match, if you happen to get into that kind of detail. And the way the match has to work is the employer matches 100% on up to the first 3% of compensation, and then they match 50% on up to the next 2% of compensation. So I like to describe it through this chart. So what that really is saying is, if the employee puts in 1% of their pay, then the employer is going to put in 1% of their pay. If the employee puts in 2% of their pay, the employer will also put in 2% of their pay. If the employee puts in 3% of their pay, the employer will put in 3% of their pay. And then it changes. So then the next 2 percentages, the employer is still matching, but at a lesser rate. You're only matching 50 cents on the dollar on those next 2 percentages. So if an employee said, I'm going to put in 4% of my pay, then the employer would be putting in 3.5% of their pay. And if the employee puts in 5% or more of their pay, the employer would put in 4% of their pay. So I just want to be clear, employees can definitely put in more than 5% of their pay, but the employer contribution would never be more than 4%. Okay. And then the third option is, it's called a non-elective safe harbor contribution. And this is a non-match. So if an employer chooses this option, you would be giving your employees a contribution of at least 3% of their pay, regardless of whether they contributed their own money or not. And you can always put in more than 3%, but it has to be uniform. You have to give everyone the same percentage. So, neither one is right or wrong. Some people like the matching option because they feel like, hey, I'm willing to help employees who are helping themselves. Other employers like the third option because they say, our employees are modestly paid. They're not here for the money. They're here for the mission. I want to give everyone this 3%. Now, regardless of which of these 3 contribution formulas you choose, employees can always make their own contributions up to IRS limits, and they can always make their own contributions on either a before tax and or a Roth basis. Okay. And when I say Roth, I'm not talking about a Roth IRA. People sometimes, when they hear the word Roth, they think Roth IRA. This is a 401k with different buckets of money. So if an employee wants to contribute on a Roth basis, that's still going into this 401k, and we're just holding it in a separate bucket for that money source. And the big difference between before tax and Roth contributions are, with Roth contributions, the employee has the opportunity to potentially never pay taxes on the earnings, never pay taxes on the growth, right? So if you keep the money in there long enough, when you go to take your money out, you don't have to pay taxes on any of it. You shouldn't have to pay taxes on the contribution because you pay taxes on those at the time you make the contribution, but the earnings you never paid taxes on, and you never have to if you keep the money in there long enough per IRS rules. There's a lot more I could say about Roth versus pre-tax, but I won't unless people ask. Okay. Now, the next slide.
Lisa, do you mind if I interrupt you with a question?
Sure.
It actually handles more with the left-hand side of the screen. And somebody asked if the employer can change its contribution.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. The employer can change the contribution, and that has to go into effect any January per IRS rules. That's the timing requirement. And we ask that you notify Empower in like the August timeframe of the year before, because we have to send out certain notices and do some other things. But the answer is yes, you can change your contribution formula. And we send out an email to you usually at the beginning of August saying, hey, if you want, let us know if you want to change your contribution formula. Some employers start out using option 1. It's not in the budget. They can't afford the employer contribution. So they start out with option 1 and then they switch to one of the other 2 options. Or it could work the other way. You could start out making an employer contribution and then you feel like, oh, the budget isn't looking great. You can change it for the next year so that there's no employer contribution. So it can go either way.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Now, providing access, one of the Commonwealth's goals was to provide access to as many nonprofit employees as possible. Therefore, all W-2 employees are eligible for this plan, including part-timers and seasonals. And they're eligible immediately and they're vested immediately. So when you're looking at your employee base, like let's say you have a couple of interns who work, 1 month over the summer, just know that, whichever contribution formula you're picking here is going to apply to all W-2 employees, including those seasonals who might only work a couple of weeks over the summer. So just bear that in mind. So some organizations who may have a few part-timers who work like over the summer, and sometimes the employer would rather not make an employer contribution for them, but they do want to give an employer contribution to everyone else. I usually say, why don't you go with option number 2? You might want to go with that option because there's a good chance that those people who are very part-time are not going to put in their own money. And if they don't put in their own money, then the employer doesn't have to put anything in. But if they did put in their own money, the employer would have to. So anyway, just, bear in mind when you're picking your contribution formula, that it would apply to all W-2 employees.
Lisa, we have a question on this matter. Can
Okay.
you limit eligibility to employees who work more than 20 hours?
You cannot, because again, and I know that with other retirement plans, there are like hours of service that employees have to work in order to get credit for a year of service. And but with this plan, no, because again, the Commonwealth was trying to be very inclusive. A lot of part-timers are regular part-timers, they're regular workers, so they really could benefit from a retirement plan. But yeah, no, you cannot restrict that based on hours of service.
Thank you.
Sure. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, how the plan was designed. And it was designed to make employees successful on their savings journey. So basically, employees still have complete control over whether they contribute their own money or not. But the auto features help employees save. So basically, if they're not doing anything, if an inertia is setting in for the employee and they're not taking any action, then a positive thing is happening for them and they're getting enrolled in the plan. But again, no one has to contribute their own money. So it's an auto enroll plan. This is like a more modern plan design feature that helps employees save. So, and we'll explain all of this to employees in the webinar we do for them. And we will send out a letter once the plan goes live, explaining to people, okay, the plan is now live. You need to call up Empower or go on Empower's website and choose the amount you want to contribute. And if you don't tell us what you want, then you are automatically going to get enrolled at a rate of 6%. And we'll put that in on a pre-tax basis, not Roth. So if you don't tell us anything, then after 60 days, you're automatically going to get enrolled at that 6% rate. It's totally avoidable. All the individual has to do is call us up and say, hey, I want to put in 5%, or I want to put in 1%, or I want to put in 0%. So they just have to tell us what they want. And if they don't tell us, that's when the auto enroll kicks in. And it's not like they're stuck with that for a whole year or anything. Like, let's say someone wasn't paying attention, 60 days went by, they got automatically enrolled. Now they're paying attention because their paycheck is lower. They can call us up right away and say, please stop going forward. Don't do this. It's not like they're stuck doing that for a year or anything like that. And down at the bottom, we have an auto escalation feature, which anybody can use. So ignore what's on the slide for just a minute. And I just want to say, everybody can use this auto escalation feature. And what it is it allows employees to set themselves up for a contribution increase each year without having to call up Empower every year. Because most employees do want to increase what they're contributing a little bit each year, but they know they're going to forget to call Empower. They have a million other things going on in their lives. So they can set themselves up to say, increase my contribution by 1% every year, or increase my contribution by $50 every year. So anyone can use this auto escalation feature. But what you're seeing on this slide, this is talking about who I call the defaulters. So the people who got automatically enrolled because the 60 days went by, they never told us what they wanted to do. So they got auto enrolled at the 6%. If year after year, they continue to not tell us what they want, then their contribution is going to increase by either 1% or 2% until it hits 15%, based on whatever you, the employer, indicate when you're completing all the adoption paperwork. So really the two decisions that you're going to make are going to be this: which of these 3 contribution formulas do you want to use? And then this: for those defaulters who never tell us anything year after year, do you want us to increase their contribution by 1% or 2%? Okay.
So we have a clarifying question.
Sure.
Does this mean that a new employee is automatically enrolled in this program, or can they opt out?
They can opt out. It's a good question. Whenever you get a new employee, you need to notify Empower so we can add them to our record keeping system. And if you get a lot of new employees, you can just add them to our system yourself because you'll already know how to do it. But if you only get a new employee once in a while, call us up. We'll walk you through how to add them. So with these auto enroll plans, all employees have to be on our record keeping system. We generate the enrollment material, and then the employee would opt out. But you are giving us everyone's information. I hope that answered it.
Thank you.
Sure. And now I'm going to move over to the investment options. I think what the Commonwealth did here was really smart. It's, I think, helpful to most employees. Oftentimes, if you work for an employer and they offer a retirement plan, they'll hand the employees a list of funds, let's say they're mutual funds, and they'll just say, hey, these are the funds that are available in our 401k. Pick what you want. And oh, by the way, make sure you diversify. A lot of employees are like, I don't know how to diversify. I will pick any 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 funds, but they don't really know what they're doing. And diversification is important. All that means is don't put all your eggs in one basket. You want to spread your money across different types of investments, because different types of investments perform differently under any given economic condition. So you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So what the Commonwealth did was they created 3 investment packages, and each package is diversified. So the individual just has to pick a package and they're getting diversification. And these are the 3 packages. There are target date funds, objective-based funds, and my total retirement. Target-based funds are really popular, and a lot of you are probably familiar with them. You'll notice they have a year in the name, like the 2020 fund, the 2035 fund, the 2065 fund. So the employee just has to pick one of these, and the one they should pick should be the one that has the year closest to when they think they're going to retire. And then we will give them the right amount of aggressiveness versus safety, and we will automatically adjust it for them every year and make it safer as they get older. So each one of these funds is made up of 6 or 7 or 8 funds inside of it. But again, the individual doesn't have to go pick those. They just pick the one with the year closest to when they're going to retire. We give you the right amount of aggressiveness and safety. We adjust it to make it safer as you get older, because that's what most people want to do. When they get older, they don't have time on their side. So, usually you want to be aggressive when you're younger because you can get a greater potential return by being aggressive, but you also want to have time on your side for the market to rebound. When you're older, you don't always have that time on your side. So that's why you usually want to get safer. On the far right, another investment package is my total retirement, also referred to as the managed account. And if an individual chooses the managed account, they'll have a phone call with one of our licensed phone advisors, and we'll ask a bunch of questions. So the only thing the target date funds are really looking at is your time horizon. When do you think you're going to retire? And then we're diversifying based on just that. But with my total retirement, we're going to ask not only, when do you think you're going to retire? But we'll ask, have you saved anything yet for retirement? How much? How is that invested? Do you plan with a spouse or partner? How much have they saved? Is your mortgage paid off? Will it be paid off in retirement? Are you going to get a pension? So it's more customized and it's more holistic. And based on the answers we get from the individual, we will create a portfolio for them that we will monitor and adjust as needed. Now, that's my total retirement. And what I described is the version that we call do it for me. And that's what most people pick. If they're picking the managed account, they're saying do it for me. But there is another version of the managed account, and that's a do it myself version. And that would allow individuals to pick their own investments of those investments that are offered under the my total retirement. Okay. So that may not be clear, but I'm assuming you'll ask about it if it wasn't. The objective-based funds are not as popular as the target date funds and the my total retirement. The objective-based funds are for individuals who don't want us to manage it for them. They don't want us to automatically make it safer. So like you might have a young person who says, I want to be really aggressive. I'm going to put everything in the growth fund. Well, that's okay because they are still getting diversification because the growth fund is made up of 3 growth funds. The income fund is made up of 3 income funds. The inflation fund is made up of 3 inflation funds. The core capital preservation fund, that's just made up of 1 fund, and that's the safe fund. So you're guaranteed a positive return, but not a specific rate of return with the capital preservation fund. So you can mix and match, the objective-based funds. Again, most people go with either the target date funds or my total retirement. Now, expense ratios, some of you might be familiar with what these are. The expense ratio is the money that gets deducted from the overall portfolio with the thousands of investors in the portfolio. And that expense ratio gets deducted to pay the portfolio manager for professionally managing the fund. So it's something you don't see because it doesn't come out of anyone's account, but it's really important because it affects the return. And the lower the expense ratio, the greater the potential return. And the expense ratios on these investments are very low. So on most of the investments, currently the expense ratio is 0.12%, also referred to as 12 basis points. So that's another really good thing about this plan. You're able to get these low expense ratios because the Commonwealth is a large institutional investor and they are able to negotiate with their business partners. And also the investments used are technically collective investment trusts. They're not mutual funds. They're just like mutual funds, but collective investment trusts are only available to large institutional investors. So,
Lisa, do you mind if I interrupt you with a question?
Sure.
So, is there any additional fee to the employee if they choose the professionally managed My Total Retirement option?
Yes, there is. And sorry, I didn't mention that. That fee is quite low. It would never be more than 0.45% of the individual's balance. So let's say they're just starting out, they have $1,000 balance. 0.45% of that is just $4.50 that the individual would pay. And the fee actually goes down once the balance hits certain levels, but it would never be more than 0.45%.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. And now I'm just going to spend, just a few more minutes on the final two sections. Now we're talking about employee engagement. As I said before, you guys wear an employer hat and an employee hat. Now we're moving over to the employee hat. So one of the tools on our website, and I know this image is sort of small, but what it's telling an individual is it's giving them a progress score. So we have all account holders come up with a goal for themselves. And the goal is, how much of your pre-retirement income do you want to have each year in retirement? Most people don't need as much money when they're retired, because all their big expenses have been paid off. So a lot of people say, yeah, I only need about 70% of my final pay, or I only need about 80%. Some people will want just as much. Some people might say, I want the same thing. I want 100% of my final pay. So everyone sets their own goal. And then every time they log on, we tell them how close they are to their goal. So this, again, you can't see very well, but the number in the circle is saying 76%. So this is telling that individual, if you keep doing what you're doing, when you go to retire, you will be at 76% of your goal. You're not going to be at 100%. There will be an income gap. You're only at 76%. And then there are sliders underneath that allow individuals to see what changes would do to that score. So the three sliders that people can play with are relating to how much they're contributing, when they want to retire, and how they're invested. So at the beginning of this presentation, one of the things I said about Empower was everything we do, we try to make it simple and actionable. And I said, we do that with our website. This is an example of that. So individuals can just move the slider and say, okay, I'm putting in 4% now. If I move this to 5% or 6%, how much does my score jump up? And then that 76 would jump up to a higher number. And then the individual, if they want to implement the change, they just hit enter and it gets implemented. So on this slide, what I want to show you is progress that different employees have made while they've had their account at Empower. So we looked over a 5-year period at our customers, and we said, okay, what was their score on average in 2016? And what is their score on average today? Because we like to think we're helping them. We like to think we're helping people save. So we said, let's test it out. And we did see, yes, individuals on average had a score of 68% of their goal. And then 5 years later, they had a score of 84%. So it's very nice to see that, the different educational tools we provide actually help people save. And here are a few more things to mention about education. Personalized campaigns. So Empower sends emails out directly to your employees based on information we have about each individual. So we try to send the right message to the right person at the right time. We're not just sending blanket messages to everyone that, might not apply to half of the people. We're not doing that. So we're using the data that we have on the individual and sending them relevant messages. So one example might be, when you turn age 50, you might get an email from us saying, hey, did you know that the IRS lets you contribute more once you reach age 50? Okay, so we're only going to send that to people who turn age 50, for example. And then that second circle, we have a whole library of educational material that are in the form of, we call them email campaigns. based on different goals or different topics. So let's say you might feel like my employees don't really understand the difference between Roth contributions and pre-tax contributions. So you could just ask a member of your Empower team, hey, do you guys have any email campaign describing the difference between Roth and pre-tax? And then we would send it to you for you in turn to email out to your employees. Okay, so we have that. And then there are really so many tools out there on the website. We have calculators, we have presentations, we have articles. We also let employees link all their outside accounts. So it's really a very robust website. We put a lot of money recently into our new communications engine to help employees save. So we sort of talk about messages as either falling into the blue category, which would be based on a time schedule. So we would deliver certain messages based on like a calendar year. Whereas the red, we call these moments that matter. So these are more when an employee takes a certain action, that is going to trigger us to send a communication. And then wrapping up here, if you do come on board, it's really easy. You complete 2 forms, which I'll walk you through. One is called a participation agreement. One is called a terms and conditions. It usually takes us about 60 days to get everything set up. By the way, if you already have a retirement plan, I can help you compare it to this plan. And if you already have a retirement plan, it might take a little bit longer than the 60 days. And the pricing, generally the startup fee is $2,500, but we are currently offering a discount, which could bring that down to $2,000. So to get the discount, you would need to be a member or become a member of Massachusetts Nonprofit Network. You guys may be familiar with them. We also refer to them as MNN. They're really the voice of nonprofits across the state. They help nonprofits grow through, public awareness, capacity building, things like that. So it's a great group to join anyway. And if you do join, then the fee is only $2,000. Then there is an annual compliance fee that is either $150 or $500. And what determines that is whether you're making an employer contribution or not. So if you are making an employer contribution, this fee is only $150. If you're not, then the fee is $500. And then there is an annual administrative fee of $200, which we don't even charge you in year 1 because we know you have that startup fee, which is not nothing. So we're trying to make things a little bit easier for you. So in year 1, you would just pay, let's say you're an MNN member, you pay the $2,000 startup fee. And let's say you're going to have a match, you'd pay $150. And then starting in year 2, all you're going to pay is $350. Okay. So starting in year 2, you add that $200. So the fee is either going to be $700 a year starting in year 2 if there's no employer contribution, or $350 starting in year 2 if there is an employer contribution. And then the employees pay a fee of $16.25 each quarter, or the employer can pay it for them. And by the way, that $16.25 comes out of their account balance. And then just to wrap up, here's a testimonial from a happy client. They say, the Massachusetts 401k plan is an invaluable tool for small nonprofits, allows those with modest budgets to offer their staff an essential benefit. Quality staff are key to nonprofit success, and a strong benefit package is necessary to attract and retain talented team members. This plan allowed us to offer a valuable retirement benefit at a low cost when other traditional plans were beyond our reach. So the reason the Commonwealth set this up is there was a need for it. They appreciate all you do, and they know it can be hard for small nonprofits to find a quality, affordable program. So they built this for you guys. And, thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any more questions now, or Jessica can email you my phone number and email address if you guys want to reach out to me later.
Muted. I was muted. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Lisa, for running this presentation. There was so much information, but not overwhelming at all. If folks wanted to write any questions right now, definitely feel free to do so, and we'll bring those up. We do have one question already. Are the fees standard across all companies who manage and offer this program?
Well, that is a good question. Empower is the only company who offers this program. The Commonwealth, again, it's the Commonwealth's plan. They selected one service provider to do all the customer service. And that one service provider was Empower. And the Commonwealth has a lot of experience working with Empower because we do the customer service on another plan that the Commonwealth offers. So we have a lot of experience working together. So you would not find this plan anywhere but Empower. Now, in general, if you went to a different company for a different plan, I think in most cases, the fees would be higher elsewhere, but probably not always. And remember, it's not all about the fee. You want to choose what's going to help your employees the most, what's in the best interest of your employees. And, this plan was built for you, tailored to the nonprofit community. So I sometimes use an analogy saying, if you're looking for a way to track your donors, would you rather use a donor database or an Excel spreadsheet? Of course, you'd rather use a donor database system, right? Because that was built for a specific purpose, just like this plan, was built for a specific purpose.
Great. Does anybody else have any other questions? I know we still have a few minutes, so folks can if they'd like to. Okay, we do have another question. What is the difference between this plan that is called a 401k and with a 403b?
Yeah, another good question. It used to be that the only plan nonprofits could set up was a 403b. And the laws changed a few decades ago, and I can't remember if it was 87-ish. And 401ks became available to nonprofits as well. The tax benefits work the same way. So 403bs can have pre-tax and Roth contributions, depending upon the specific 403b plan. 401ks can have Roth and pre-tax contributions. So the tax benefits all work the same. If you contribute on a pre-tax basis, you're lowering your current taxable income the year you make the contribution. But the reason the Commonwealth set this plan up as a 401k is because the investments, more investment options are allowed in a 401k than are allowed in a 403b. And you might have caught me saying, these are not mutual funds in this plan. They are collective investment trusts, also known as a CIT. Well, collective investment trusts have lower expense ratios than mutual funds, but those are only allowed in 401ks and not 403bs. So that's why the Commonwealth said, I'm going to set this up, as a 401k, so we can offer these investments that have really low expense ratios.
Great. I know, again, few more minutes. Thank you for being so thorough, Lisa, and your questions. Do any other folks have questions? If you do, you can feel free to put them in the chat. While we are waiting for those, Lisa, do you have any other points after seeing these questions or after the presentation that you would like to bring up or remind folks, just in case?
I would just say, I gave a lot of information, so maybe to just bullet a few important things. Number one, this plan was built for you. And, I speak with the Commonwealth regularly. They're very interested in what you all are saying, so they can evolve the plan so that it continues to meet your needs. So that's a really nice thing. And also the Commonwealth serves as the fiduciary. Really nice thing. Another thing I'll mention, really low expense ratios, really low annual fee. And then thirdly, Empower. We're a world-class record keeper, and your employees are getting all of the tools Empower has to offer, even though they have 20 employees or less. Empower doesn't say we're only offering these tools to our largest clients. So those are just a couple of things to keep in mind.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We've stopped the flow of questions, but I feel like we had a good amount of engagement throughout. So thank you so much for coming, Lisa, and presenting this Money Talk Tuesday. I just have to ask, so what if you do want to continue with the core plan? What would you do next after this presentation?
Yeah, thank you. You would contact me. I would give you a little bit more information. I didn't cover absolutely everything, but I covered 95% of things. So I'll give you a little bit more information, and then I would just walk you through the adoption paperwork. Thanks for the question.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I'll repaste your email in the chat. And if you had any questions for the Money Talk Tuesday, or just in general, feel free to reach out to us at the Office of Economic Empowerment. And we hope to see you at the next one. Thank you again, Lisa, and please feel free to answer the survey on your way out.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Jessica.
Thank you all.
Bye.